Can we have the microphone, please? Ladies, do you have the microphone? Here, here. It's coming. Okay. I kindly invite you to introduce yourself, shortly, and make the statement also shortly. To the point.
Yes, many thanks. Johan Gelif, working for the Swiss Development and Cooperation Agencies. Something which is missing in this debate regarding the global water governance is everything which is related to the water diplomacy. I know 5 countries where the water management is directly in the hands of the national spy agencies. I know another 25 countries where the water management issues is in the hands of the presidential cabinet. The more you are moving in the cursor in water scarcity situation, the more the water is politicized. In 40 years, 60% of the population, between 60 to 70% of the overall population will be living in a world in a situation of scarcity. So of course we need an intergovernmental agency, not a panel, but an agencies to deal with water issues at political level. Of course currently we have the United Nations UN Water, but this is a coordination mechanism for the 29 UN agencies. So how can we move forward to have an international, intergovernmental, political body to deal with this situation where the management of water will be more and more in the hands of the President, King, Premier Minister, and not anymore in the hands of Minister of Agriculture, Minister of Water, or Minister of Environment.
Oui, bonjour. Je vais exprimer une voix française, peut-être en français, si vous me le permettez. Pierre Muller, je représente le ministère des Affaires étrangères de la France et j'ai écouté avec beaucoup d'intérêt ces échanges. Je m'en ferai l'interprète auprès de notre ministère. Nous avons tous entendu notre Premier ministre dire hier qu'il ne fallait pas que l'eau soit en quelque sorte le parent pauvre de la gouvernance internationale du développement durable et nous avons, la France a une approche que je veux peut-être décrire très rapidement en 3 piliers. D'abord, vous l'avez mentionné, monsieur, le renforcement institutionnel du pilier environnemental du développement durable et l'élément central, et le Premier ministre l'a dit hier, la transformation du programme des Nations Unies pour l'environnement en une agence spécialisée des Nations Unies et ouvrant sur l'évolution vers une organisation mondiale de l'environnement. Le Conseil européen du 2 mars a clairement pris position en faveur d'une telle évolution. Et je crois également que le Conseil d'administration du programme des Nations Unies pour l'environnement, qui s'est réuni en février à Nairobi, a détecté une convergence entre l'Union européenne et l'Union africaine dans cette direction. Et donc, agence spécialisée dédiée à l'environnement, dont il y a toutes les ressources, toutes les problématiques de l'environnement, dans laquelle l'eau aurait toute sa centralité. Le deuxième pilier de l'approche française, c'est le renforcement des instruments internationaux existants pour la coopération transfrontalière dans le domaine de la gestion de l'eau. Vous avez mentionné la Convention de 1997. Il y a également la Convention de 1992 sur les cours d'eau transfrontaliers et les lacs internationaux. Le verre est en train de se remplir, si je puis dire, et nous nous rapprochons du seuil de ratification nécessaire à la mise en œuvre, à l'entrée en vigueur de la Convention de 1997. Et je crois le Premier ministre le Premier ministre français s'est engagé hier à accueillir en France la première réunion des parties prenantes à cette convention après qu'elle entrera en vigueur. L'idée de ces conventions, évidemment, on n'est pas dans une démarche contraignante, on est dans une démarche de diffusion, d'appropriation des idées, une démarche de création, de formation de consensus autour de principes tels que l'usage équitable et raisonnable de la ressource de l'eau, tel que Esther Roy l'a dit tout à l'heure, la préservation des écosystèmes. Et je crois que nous sommes là au fond, et c'est le troisième pilier de l'approche française, dans une démarche de consensus, une démarche inclusive qui permette de mettre autour d'une table, dans différentes instances, toutes les parties prenantes, que ce soit les gouvernements, que ce soit les parlements, les collectivités territoriales, les agences techniques, les organisations internationales, bien entendu, les organisations non gouvernementales, les scientifiques, la société civile. Et au fond, ce sixième forum mondial de l'eau est la meilleure illustration de cette démarche. Voilà, en peut-être trop de mots, quelle est notre approche, l'approche française précisément, pour que l'eau ne soit plus le parent pauvre de la gouvernance internationale du développement durable. Merci.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Javad Amin Mansour. I'm Director for Trade, Energy and Water from Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Iran. I would like to touch upon three issues. One was the first, in my view, the first meeting, international and intergovernmental meeting on water was on Ramsar Convention, which was finalized in 1971. It focused on wetlands, and just in order to correct you that there was such a conference before the conference you mentioned in 1977. The second point with regard to the Convention on Transboundary Waters of 1997, please take note that maybe the reason that many countries didn't join that convention is the fact that we have to be more realistic, and maybe at this stage we need to underscore the importance of bilateral agreements and where appropriate multilateral agreements with regard to transboundary water resources at this stage, and try to highlight those agreements. With regard to, I try to be very brief, with regard to CSD, Commission on Sustainable Development, let me explain that maybe people are not very well aware of the activities of Commission on Sustainable Development, because of, I was a member of the Bureau of Commission, and I was deeply involved in the negotiations on water. CSD 13 succeeded to reach consensus on water. I have a copy of that here, and it addressed the question of access to basic water services, IWRM, collection of wastewater, means of implementation, and it assigned the UN Water as an interagency mechanism to follow up the issue, and also the other international agencies. So the Commission has done a lot with regard to water, and water is among, and sanitation is among the issues with which the international negotiations could reach agreement. Because we cannot have a world or global mechanism, because it is very complicated, because it has three dimensions of economic development, social development, and environmental protection. So we cannot just raise this question in one single international organization at global level. That's why I think we cannot reach agreement on this issue at this stage. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you. My name is Ambassador Fahmi. I come from Egypt. I represent the International Water Resources Association. Association for Africa and the Middle East. My commentary very shortly concerns when we discussed the UN Convention and mentioned that some countries have reservations with regards to sovereignty. You see, sovereignty, when you define sovereignty over a territory, it's easy. But in the case of rivers, it's a moving mass. The water is in a moving mass. So it's impossible to define sovereignty over a moving mass. In addition, any action within the boundary of one state may adversely affect another state. And this is the problem. That is why the Helsinki rules took 30 years to codify. The International Association took 30 years to codify guidelines that could be used in order to settle disputes or to share water resources between states. And the same thing are the principles included in the UN Convention. Thank you.
All right, hold your fire for a second. Let's come back to the discussion. Alistair, may I invite you to make your comments from the point of view of the conventions? Go ahead.
Thank you. The way I see it is, you know, we have things, transboundary waters, you know, and it sort of links to the whole UN system. It's the elephant in the room. You know, we don't. There's a reluctance to deal with transboundary waters sometimes because there's no legal mandate there, and I think the facts speak for themselves. You know, you've got 158 river basins that lack cooperative management frameworks. What can we do with these challenges of climate change? How can we have a strong water voice if we don't have these strong frameworks in place? And then also, I think it's important to look at this in terms of regimes. And again, this talks about, you know, if we're going to tackle this transboundary issue, there's a huge amount of work to be done. The progress, I mean, if you look at the rate of transboundary agreements that have been adopted, you know, you had this great peak past Rio, you know, this warmth of cooperation, and then it went like this. And at the moment it's, you know, 1 or 2, if you're lucky, a year. But bearing in mind that we still have this big gap and lack of legal frameworks at the basin level. So we also have a lot of experience around international environmental regimes. We know how regimes and governance systems, you know, can function. Our colleague from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in France talked about, you know, developing shared understandings, you know, at least having a general consensus where we can get together collectively to develop more detail on what that understanding might mean is important, and I think we also have a very good example of that regime within the 92 UNEC Helsinki Convention, which, by the way, will soon be open to signature. It will be of non-UNEC member states, of all UN member states, and there I think you have a very nice example of a regime where states coming together, cooperating, the value of multilateral, multi-basin cooperation to improve the implementation, to support basin cooperation where ultimately the decisions have to be made. So I think there is where I think, you know, that is where we should be focused on. We should be focused on, you know, we should tackle this transboundary issue head on. We should be talking about regimes. We've got a great window of opportunity with the entry into force of the 97 Watercourses Convention and the 92 UNEC Helsinki Convention. They're not going to solve all the problems. We still need agreements at the basin level, but there's an important support mechanism there which is badly needed.
Thank you. Perhaps I should have mentioned earlier that currently nearly 3 billion people are living over transboundary basins and aquifers. That's 40% of the world population. Now down the road, less than 40 years from now, there are going to be 9 billion human beings. That means that roughly 4 billion will be living over shared basins and aquifers. We have the the principles. Well, we have the convention, the Surface Water Convention, 97 Convention, and the aquifer, whether it will be a convention or will be a UN recommendation, this is yet to be seen how the General Assembly will decide. But considering the fact that 90% of the unfrozen water is under the earth as an invisible resource, groundwater, that is an extremely important issue to come up with a legally binding regulatory framework over transboundary aquifers. So that is a huge, huge issue, because the 97 Convention is still a piece of cake from a point of view of technicality. It's linear. That goes in, comes out, and it's very easy to regulate. But in case of aquifers, it depends on the geological formation. So the country that pollutes at the same time in another part may get back to pollution. It's a lot more complicated game. The issues of data secrecy were mentioned. True, there are still some countries where hydrological data are classified, military secret, if you wish. However, thanks to technology, and particularly due to that immense development that has taken place over the past 20 years in remote sensing, probably data secrecy will be gone very soon, because the satellites are not, the side-looking satellites and satellites with radars are not only are able to measure the channel geometry, but they're able to measure the flow velocity as well. So a discharge, which is considered as in many cases as a classified data, that will be public. So technology helps to build, if you like, more trust, because that's the data secrecy issue was over transboundary basins was always a matter of trust. I very much appreciate, Excellency, the Ramsar reference, which was indeed in Ramsar in Iran. However, it was very important, but it dealt with wetlands only, and the deals and the agreements and the resolutions that the Mar del Plata came up with 6 big volumes was indeed a very comprehensive, making reference, of course, to Ramsar, a very, very comprehensive review. And I'm just wondering whether members of the panel would like to reflect to some of the discussion items here. Vincenta, no? Yeah, please go ahead.
Eu gostaria. Em relação à proposta apresentada aqui pelo representante do Irã, de acordos bilaterais ou multilaterais envolvendo uma bacia, nós somos favoráveis, eu particularmente sou favorável, e acho que isso não é contraditório e nem restritivo à discussão de uma identidade mais geral da água, no âmbito da ONU. Então, eu não queria colocar uma situação contra a outra, visto que a melhor governança pode ser feita a respeito da bacia, inclusive nos aspectos de soberania, através desses acordos bilaterais. Inclusive, é uma tendência geral, até mesmo no campo econômico, né? Há uma substituição da representação no âmbito da ONU, e uma substituição, na realidade, não no âmbito da ONU, a partir mesmo até de condições econômicas. Então, primeiro, manifestar acordo com a proposta apresentada pelo Irã, mas dizer que eu penso que ela não deve ser contraditória com a questão de uma identidade mais geral da água no âmbito da ONU. A segunda é dialogar com a proposta apresentada pela França, que, como nós mencionamos, que é de ter uma agência ambiental fortalecida, que é uma proposta também com a qual temos simpatia, mas nós gostaríamos de fazer a discussão da água também nos aspectos sociais e também nos aspectos econômicos. Então, nesse sentido, nós acreditamos que, através de um Conselho de Desenvolvimento Sustentável, né, aproveitando, inclusive, como eu mencionei, essa crise mais geral dos próprios organismos da ONU, nós poderíamos buscar uma integração da água, não só nos seus aspectos ambientais, que são bastante relevantes, mas fundamentalmente nos aspectos econômicos e sociais. A discussão sobre A erradicação da pobreza no Brasil, a segurança alimentar, elas todas estão relacionadas também ao tema da água e elas não são só temas específicos da conjuntura ambiental. Então, nós estamos defendendo essa proposta, mas, evidentemente, com uma simpatia apresentada pela proposta também apresentada pela França. Estou dizendo aqui em nome pessoal. Penso que, mais do que nós resolvermos essa polêmica a respeito de qual a melhor proposta, mas que nós nos puséssemos em acordo em relação a essa nova identidade da água. Eu descartaria tanto a questão de água e clima, como descartaria a questão da agência única, e penso que as principais recomendações desse Conselho deveriam estar em torno da proposta apresentada pelo primeiro-ministro da França e a proposta que vem sendo apresentada também de tratar a água dentro de um novo organismo na ONU, que seria o Conselho de Desenvolvimento Sustentável.
Thank you very much. I think there's a bit of a misunderstanding in the discussion here. Is nobody would like to make UNEP a water agency globally within the UN, but rather to recognize the excellent good work that UNEP has done and turn it into what is called a specialized agency, where governments contribute based on assessed contributions. So there would be regular payment into the operations of UNEP, not voluntary contributions as they are now. But the debate has reflected here also what is currently discussed is, how to accommodate the environmental impact, environmental implications, the social implications, underpinned by data and knowledge is really the big issue. I think we are converging now to a summary, and I would like to invite the panelists in no more than 3 sentences to summarize what they consider the most important outcome of this discussion. Francisco, would you?
Yes, thank you. Well, what else can be said? I think our moderator, animator, pulled all wires, and a lot of opinions were expressed, and I think the debate was very broad. And I think that at the end of the day, we all recognize that there are global goals, global targets that require some sort of global governance, whatever the institutional nature of that global governance. Of course, governance does not mean government. It is much more open and participated by all sorts of organizations and initiatives of civil society. And as we said already and insisted, the fact that there are many organizations dealing with water, even in the UN system, is rather good than bad, because it reflects the importance and diverse angles from what water can be addressed and approached. And that's part of the solution, to consider all those angles, all those points of view. But having said that, and recognizing that we always should deal with a lot of organizations, a lot of motivated parties, yes, I think that we should not be satisfied with the status quo. I think that some kind of upgrading needs to be done, and I think that some ambitious steps forwards in terms of establishing goals for the global, or for water addressed at the global level. In fact, water is a global problem, ever-present, ubiquitous, but its scale of manifestation is often local and regional, but that should not prevent us for establishing common goals. And we should not forget that stakeholders and interested parties should be involved as managers of a condominium. And of course, this is a very local or regional framework, but this should be part of a common process of achieving general goals. We were exposed to the, I would call it the French approach of creating a water agency, and the Brazilian approach of giving visibility, establishing an agenda, but not necessarily creating an agenda. I think both solutions may be interesting. Maybe the Brazilian proposal is more realistic at this stage, principally because there is the other process going on of creating an agency for environment. So maybe that agency for environment will be created soon. Of course, again, it will deal with water like UNEP is dealing with water, but they should not have the exclusive of dealing with water. And the proposal that the Brazilian government, from what I understand, is making of creating some entity or addressing this problem at CST level, I think it's very realistic if we are able of establishing an agenda, having a way of monitoring it and promoting progress towards those goals. So I think, yes, we need some kind of improved global water governance.
Thank you very much. Wim?
Well, to keep it short, I think on all the levels we discussed, when you know everything and you know have your goals and you have your information and you have your governance, it begins at the end. You need the political will to realize it.
That's it.
And until that, it's muddling through.
Okay, thank you. Alistair?
Yeah, to summarize, well, yeah, I mean, essentially I think we need living documents. You know, we need the agreements. We don't have enough of the agreements in place. But laws on paper won't work in itself. You need them. I mean, you wouldn't buy a house without a contract. But I think within a transboundary context, at a national level, always a need for that legal mandate. But that needs to be living. It needs to be constantly reevaluated, reassessed, and that's where the political processes come into play. And as I said at the beginning, I think the interrelationship between the two is really fundamental.
Thank you. Vincent, last thoughts?
Bem, eu gostaria de dizer que o fortalecimento da água na agenda da ONU não pode prescindir do fortalecimento de fóruns como este. Então, eu gostaria de dizer que nós estamos fazendo um debate a respeito da ONU, mas a nossa posição é de fortalecimento do Conselho Mundial da Água como uma representação da sociedade aqui que contém o governo. Lá é uma representação na ONU, uma representação de governos com uma participação da sociedade, um pouco maior, mas ainda pequena, mas aqui é uma participação da sociedade. Então, eu queria dar essa mensagem de que, até agradecer ao Conselho Mundial por tratar de um tema tão polêmico como esse, mas que a nossa posição é também a do fortalecimento do Conselho Mundial da Água e de diversas outras organizações que tratam da água, mas especialmente essa, e não é por outra razão que estão aqui neste fórum mais de 250 brasileiros, representando mais de 100 instituições, justamente com essa visão do fortalecimento também da sociedade para fazer esse debate no âmbito das instâncias de governo, no caso aqui o foco em relação à ONU. A outra é que nós debatemos pouco a questão dos fundos, né? E penso que essa é uma questão crucial também, porque não basta apenas a questão da constituição da melhor organização, da melhor instituição, mas também como nós vamos viabilizar de maneira efetiva os recursos para que essas propostas se tornem realidade. Mas penso que é possível, daqui até a Rio+20, que nós possamos apresentar contribuições mais consistentes a respeito dessa questão também dos fundos, e de que a gente possa inserir no documento final da Rio+20 a água como um tema preponderante, ou pelo menos um tema com equivalência às demais temáticas ambientais e desenvolvimento sustentável que estão lá apresentadas, fato que ainda não está concretizado em torno do documento Zero Draft. Então, muito obrigado pela oportunidade, agradeço muito, inclusive, ao próprio Conselho, a disposição de tratar desse tema que nós consideramos no Brasil um tema altamente relevante para a questão da água em nível global. Muito obrigado.
Well, thank you very much. This was basically a summary, and then we are closing now this session. I learned from the panel that while everybody hopes that the agenda will not be driven by politics, but politics will be driven by the recognition of the importance of water as an environmental issue and as a social issue and as an issue that cuts across the whole thing. If politics takes over, then we will repeat the same thing 20 years from now. I would like to thank the outstanding performance of the panelists, also the audience, and the remarkable fact that we haven't lost really our audience. So thank you so much. Thank you very much. Let's give them a hand. The session is closed.